everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Universe Within podcast. Today I sat down with my friend Claude. I've known Claude for a number of years, and he's originally an anthropologist, and now he also calls himself a bridgekeeper, which I think is a really apt title for him. Kind of this idea of bridging many different indigenous traditions, bridging modern science and ancient science. And he's just a really great guy. And this podcast is a bit long. I think it went 3 hours, but it's filled with just some really amazing information. I could talk to Claude for hours, as you'll see. But he's a really amazing guy. I have a lot of respect for him. And he just has a tremendous wisdom, a real learned experience. And I think you guys will get a lot out of this show. As always, if you can go on YouTube to the channel and hit the subscribe button, that would be a big help. And also, if you could take a few seconds and go on Apple Podcasts and leave a starred review and a rating, or a starred rating and a review, that would be a really big help for getting this show out there. So I think that's it. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Claude.
So we're all Mombai'd up. So yeah, the thing with Elon Musk, I saw that.
It's crazy, man. It's really scary. Science fiction right here.
Mm.
It reminded me, you know Ayrton Krenak. He's an amazing indigenous leader from Brazil, from the Krenak people.
Mm.
He's a great philosopher. He wrote, author, and one of the founders of the indigenous movement in Brazil in the 80s. And he said, these guys they love making toys. And they're making toys all the time, and new toys and more toys, regardless of where they need the materials to get them, and regardless of the destruction they make in taking out those materials to make those toys. And now I hear they want to go to Mars. They want to make new toys to see if they go to Mars. Is that it's funny. I hear all the time in the news that there is not enough respirators here, and they want to go live in Mars. Well, if they can make a toy to go live in Mars, the only thing I can say, please hurry up and go and leave us alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I had mixed feelings about it. I mean, it seems like there is a lot of scientific and medical potential, but it also seems like we're getting in some weird territory with that.
Man, imagine.
Yeah. But I mean, we're not that far removed already with our cell phones and our computers, but yeah, I mean, that seems the direction a lot of that is going. So yeah. Cool, man. So welcome. Where do we start? So I know you from the plant, the Ayahuasca Healing Center, Temple of the Way of Light in Peru. We worked there for a number of years. But I don't know actually so much about your background. So maybe we start there. Who are you?
Who am I? That's always a big question. I've been asking myself that also for a long time.
Mm-hmm. No answers yet, huh?
Well, a lot of answers, and the funny thing with this is like it takes a long time to figure out more or less what are we doing here, right? So Yeah, as you know, I'm Peruvian. I lived in Belgium for many years, where I studied anthropology. I don't know exactly which came first. This um, the need to understand other different cultures. So that brought me to anthropology, or the plants also. You know, this fascination for this idea that with some plants you can have access to different realms of knowledge, access to knowledge from a different path. And then, you know, in that time when I was, you know, in my 20s, uh, getting out from Peru, from those difficult times in Peru, and then finding all that freedom, and then realizing that all the things that were taught to me that as absolute truths, being Catholic religion, being social um, uh, manners and everything, right?
Mhm.
Everything was suddenly in the confrontation with the other, different, with diversity, was put into doubt. You know, I went to Belgium. I had Senegalese friends, Moroccan friends, Russians. When I was studying French to live there in Brussels, you know, and I had people from all over the world, and you know, so, I always remember these Senegalese friends invite me to eat to their place, and you know, all these African people sitting on the floor with a big pot, like a big paella pot,
Mhm.
and then all the women taking the pieces of chicken and throwing to each one, and then everybody eating with hands. And I was like so shocked because I was really brought up like you have to eat like this and properly, you know, manners, like right. And then I started eating with my hands, and they started laughing at me because I didn't have any manners on how to eat with my hands, you know. These kind of things made me realize that I was really that my own cultural background was totally relative. It was a choice, you know, that from ancestors, you know, that were basically imposed to me, you know. And I had this very deep sense that the questions that I had and you know the what I wanted to experience from life, my culture was not able to give me those answers, you know. So I started
Mhm.
looking around, you know, looking out. So when I got to the plant, that's why I was saying that I don't know which one came first. You know, this idea of studying anthropology or studying the plants. I think they came very much in the same time, and it was all as a means of like really questioning my own culture, my own values, even the core things, right? Really
Mhm.
put those things into consideration, because I realized that it was not absolute truth, that everything was relative, and it was through the eyes of the other that I could see what I was not able to see. And this is something that I realized in many, many years afterwards, you know.
Mhm.
So in this, after studying anthropology, then I did my thesis, my dissertation on in Iquitos about Westerners' use of ayahuasca, and this was in the year 2005, 5 and 6, and I was there doing my research, and yeah, and then I eventually I came back to Peru and started working with the Shipibo, and then we met at the Temple of the Way of Light, and this is, you know, being there with the Shipibo, we always having this thing, you know, because the plants, they have something very, very powerful, very deep, but also very tricky. because they show you very fast a lot of things, you know, like amazing things. Like you're like overwhelmed of like, oh my God, what is this? I saw the truth or something like that, right? And it's tricky because it's somehow it makes us feel that we can go very fast on that path. Oh, if I take enough of this, I will, you know, get to a certain level and maybe become a shaman or a medicine man or an illuminated person or whatever, you know. And then after years and years and years, I realized that that's not the case, you know. There's no way to avoid really the sacrifice of apprenticeship, the sacrifice and the hard work, the hardship of initiation, you know. There's layers and layers and layers and layers, and there's no shortcut, you know. So I had this conflict in myself because I was always when I was meeting these elders, masters, they were always picking me like a helper and assistant, translator, you know, and teaching me a lot of things because I you know, because I'm good with languages, they always got me with like for translating. And for translating, they started teaching me a lot of things, more than, you know, they were teaching the rest, because they needed me to really translate the idea, not just the words, but the emotion, the feeling, the core, you know, and I needed to understand deeply these things in order to be able to communicate it to others in another language. And so then I had this conflict for many years, like, because I had this strong relationship with the medicine and the teachers. It's like, am I supposed to be a shaman? Am I supposed to be a medicine man? Am I supposed to actually apprentice enough so that I can do that work that is amazing and help a lot of people, you know? And then the conflict was something in my mind, in my head, saying like, brother, really? I don't want to go there. It's too much, you know? And especially, you know, after years of really trying to get free of all this conditionments and stuff, I was deep inside my head, something was saying like, what's my family gonna say? What are my friends from school think about this? Nobody's gonna accept me. Everybody's gonna think that I'm crazy. What's my father? My father is gonna be so disappointed. You know, this weight of things, you know, that I could not escape until eventually I realized that was not my path, and it was in a vision, and where I realized that my mission was to be that bridge. And that's when this whole notion and concept of the bridge keepers came forward and started developing. And for me, when I got that, it was an epiphany for me. It was like, you know, what do you want from me? I was asking the medicine, like, really, if you don't tell me now, you don't see me never again, you know? I don't want any tricks. I don't want any metaphors or something. I want really directly, what do you want from me? Otherwise, I'm gone. You don't see me again. I don't work for you anymore. I was really fed up, you know? And after, of course, not showing me anything, and I said, like, okay, I drop it. I told you I quit. When I laid down, then it came this like explosion, colors, like Vegas, fireworks and stuff. And it was like the bridge keepers in English and in plural. You know, and for me it was, oh my God, that's exactly it. That's it. You don't need to show me anything else. I stood up and started working again, and here I am, you know, at full service of that, bridging the ancestral world the world of that that knowledge of spirits, indigenous peoples, and the mother world, and my own culture. That even if I'm from Peru, I come from a very Western background, right?
Mm.
So that's a bit of me, So if you ask me, what are you? What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? For service. I'm a bridge keeper. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find that interesting with you because, I mean, some could be my own kind of preconceptions about anthropologists, maybe even in both ways. It seems like a lot of anthropologists, they kind of maybe have this somewhat detached mentality of just kind of observing these cultures and writing about them or studying them almost from an outside perspective. And then I've also seen the other side where people get so involved in the culture that they think that's them. They kind of found their long lost tribe. But I find with you have this really nice balance. Like you said, you've really gone into this work, but you still seem to maintain some distance too. So maybe you can talk about that. From an anthropological point of view. How do you find that balance, or what is that balance that's important for you?
It's funny because you were asking the question, and it made me think of psychologists. There's like a lot of psychologists that that really have this dedication and help others. But if you go to the university and you go to undergraduate course of psychology, you rapidly realize that most of the people that are there are not really to learn psychology to help people. They are wanting to understand their own shit. They have a lot of problems in their heads, and they want to study that to understand and trying to solve it, right? And eventually, that do it, they are really good at helping others, And I think with anthropologists might be happening the same thing. You have these people that are really academicians, can you say, academics, that are there to really with this curiosity of reading a lot and studying and trying to, with a philosophical point of view of understanding the other. And then there's people like me who try to study the other because we want to understand ourselves, because we are lost. And why I haven't fall into that thing of becoming the other. I think because I also come from a world where it's very difficult to accept authority and accept masters, a master-apprentice relationship. We come from this world that's oh, I love the teaching, I love the message, but I don't like the container. This kind of thing. That we are always criticizing and stuff, and also we have this hyper idealization of what a master should be, So when I meet some masters and I get into these kind of things, very rapidly I get out of this relationship because it just makes me uncomfortable. In some moments I can be a really good apprentice and I just follow the rules, follow the guidelines and total discipline and I go for it. But eventually I see a little thing, it's not in alignment and stuff, and say man, this is not gonna work. I prefer to be your friend, So this is what I always do, and I eventually become friends with these people, and this allows me to go deeper in many things, and also allows me to develop these relationships where I can really help them, when I can really bridge that, you know, because there's no, you know, these things of like a pressure of a kind of relationship of authority and or you know, or an interest. I'm here with you because I want to learn from you and I want to get all of this from you. Then I felt always, in my experience, other people is of course different, you know, but in my experience it was like this is getting in the way of a pure relationship, that I can really bridge, you know, because bridging it to other people while I am the apprentice, there's even these crazy things of jealousy, for example. Some other people is learning faster than me, and it's like I feel these things inside and I don't want that, you know. It's amazing. You work on it and stuff, you deal with it, and but I realized that I didn't want this kind of thing. So, and another thing is that unfortunately in the indigenous people, we idealize them a lot, but we have to understand as well that nowadays they have suffered so much and they have lost also so much of their cultures. So I don't think there's one civilization, that one culture, one people in the world that can claim that they are pure, that they have kept until today the full system, the full knowledge, body of knowledge. They have lost a lot of things. All of us, we have lost our stories of origin, that, you know, and we put pieces from others, you know. And understanding this, I realized that I couldn't, just like with my own culture, I could not find all these answers I was looking for, or waiting, being open to get them eventually, that from only one people. And then I started realizing that the more I move, the more I walk, then the more different pieces of the puzzle I get, you know. And that's why I'm, you know, and it's not the best, because all of the you know, even the Shipibo, the Tubu, the Arhuaco people, the Muisca, or the Shuar, things coming from some ideas from the Shuar, or even when I started with a master that was coming from the Red Road, you know, and peyote and suelos and all these things. Because of this thing that I have, it's my own thing that probably I have to work on it. I stay in a more or less superficial thing. I understand a lot, and my aim is to like put the pieces of the puzzle in a very philosophical way, if you want, but it's hard for me to really dive deep in the depths of only one and then stay there constantly, you know. And this is something like, you know, other people do it amazingly, you know, but for me it's been very hard. And I realize it's also this thing of like, I don't know how you say in English, el que mucho abarca poco aprieta. So if you want to hold a lot, then you cannot hold that tight. I don't know how the saying is. But in the same time, I'm interested in this larger picture, you know, and this is the thing, you know, like bringing from the pieces of the puzzle, you know, and integrating. It's like recreating together a new mandala of humanity, you know. You know, that was destroyed somehow.
Yeah, that's something I like a lot about. We can maybe talk about him later, but Amika and the Tubu tradition, with this idea of creating a new Maloka, creating something that bridges all of these different paths and traditions. It's a really common question I often get. Um, so maybe this is a twofold question. One, it's very common. For example, people will say something like, "What do the Shipibo think?" And it's a very interesting thing because obviously, I mean, on one hand, that would be like asking, "What do Peruvians think?" or "What do Americans think?" Uh,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, certainly as cultures, we are born in a time and a place, and there are certain things that we are born into that as you said, you didn't have a choice of that. That's just your worldview. And yet at the same time, if you were to say, what do Americans or what do Peruvians think, people would look at you like you're crazy because we all
Yeah.
think different things.
Yeah.
So where do you think that balance is? And also, with that, you mentioned something that I think is really important, which is this idea of change. And sometimes we look at these traditions as if they're somehow stagnant or pure, as if nothing has changed. And obviously, I mean, not only from outside influence, things are changing all the time, but even within. I mean, even if a group is isolated, there's new ideas coming up, and especially in this world today, there's no way to avoid that. So I don't know if that's a question, but maybe talking to some degree about that, about this idea of what is an identity of a group, and how that can and does change.
Well, for me, what defines indigenous people, it's a really strong connection, link with a particular territory.
Mm.
Through what? Basically through stories of origin that we have, like, are common to my group. This is like, we come from this and we live in this territory, and this makes us different from them, from others, right? But it's all indigenous people, they have developed different ways in which they connect and have a communication with the, let's say, invisible forces of the territory, right? But this idea of the stories is very, very important, And the Tubu and the Huitoto and all these people in the Amazon, that they use the Mambi, peoples of the story, they say. And they would say, like, if you lose your story, then you're exterminated. So of course, we're talking about not very, very large groups, but sharing a common story is essentially what makes us part of a group, of a social group, even in modern days, if some people say, I'm Trotsky, I'm communist, I'm Marxist, it's all stories, narratives, right? That when you encounter somebody that share exactly the same story, the same narrative, you connect immediately, right? The thing is, these stories are not just stories. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're fading out a little, but yeah, I can still hear you.
Yeah. So as I was saying, for the Tubu, that I have more experience with them, this idea that the stories are not just stories. It's really powerful, deep spiritual technology, but spiritual not in a sense of like believing in something, It's in the sense that it's a practice. I say technology with full understanding of what that means, you know, and how it can be a bit confusing, how a story can be a technology. But it really is, because it has a purpose and a method and a way of transmission, you know, to address particular things. So the story is not just told for whatever reason, but sometimes a story is brought to heal something, to heal a problem, to bring unity to the people, to bring harmony in the territory, you know, in the way the humans are using and interacting with the territory. So, and it's much more than just a narrative. It goes beyond the logos, it goes beyond the words. It really does work in other realms, you know, that they would say spiritual, you know. And this is very interesting. And then this thing of like, you know, sharing what a particular story. These stories, they are understood as coming from the origin, and it's also like the legacy and the you can imagine like those stories are the memory of the experience of the ancestors in those territories. So they contain all the problems that they might be, all kinds of diseases. Well, what's the origin? When was the first time this situation appeared, and how our ancestors solved it, you know? But then when we become orphans of our own story, as they say, we lose those stories, forget them. They say people start creating and believing their own discourse. And since it's a discourse, a speech that is disconnected from that source, they say, because this is a crazy madness of world, of life, whatever thing you invent on top that is disconnected with that anchor to that origin is going to create more chaos, more chaos, and more chaos, more chaos. Eventually, you find solutions for different things, but those solutions, because they are disconnected from that source, they will eventually become the next problem, because you could not see what problems that new thing would bring. So there's all this idea, for example, in our civilization, this adoration for the god innovator, you know. Innovation is the most important thing in our society, you know. We adore it. We are like, oh my God, this is something new. This is we adore this thing. The more new, the more innovation it brings, the better, right? But for indigenous people, it's not like that. You bring something new, they're like, oh, man, you are going to create chaos. You are going to create imbalance. You don't have an idea of what you're bringing into the game. Mm-hmm. So this thing of like really following the stories, not like Christians do with the Bible, for example, because that demands it's a realm of faith. You know, you're taught all these teachings from the Bible, and then you're taught you have to have faith. You have to believe in this. But as a child, you have a lot of questions, and why, you know? Why God did that, and why? How did He take a rib from Adam's to create? It doesn't make sense. And people say like, oh, those are mysteries. You have to believe. You have to have faith. That doesn't happen in indigenous people. There's not this thing about faith, having faith from, you know, about a belief that something is there. It's like the elder, when you're curious enough of asking a lot of questions, it's like, okay, wait, you will see when the time is come, you know. And then you are brought through initiation, through apprenticeship, to really experience what does it mean, you know, and to really to integrate, you know, these teachings. It's like, oh, this is what it means. All right, it's not just stories, but it's, you know, through my own experience, I see that what these stories are really telling me. And this is when you start becoming a master, when you pass from that step of like knowing the stories, like anybody can know any story, and to really have the profound, deep experience of what this story is about. So that it is not anymore a matter of belief, but it's real because you experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Do you think in the West that would be kind of correlated to the idea of myth? Because that seems like something that many of us have really lost, are these old stories, which do seem to resemble or point to something much deeper. And also this idea of ritual, which seems like something many of us have lost as well. Like you're pointing to the initiatory experience, or as I'm sure we'll talk more about, this plant work seems like one of the gateways to potentially understanding these stories or understanding these myths, not just on a literal sense, but what they're actually pointing to on a deeper level.
Yeah, but I think all societies have this, and even the modern societies, we are full of myths and full of ritual and initiation. Mm-hmm. We don't call them that, but they are. Mm-hmm. You know, the fact that you know, you elect a president, you know, and I guess he has to go to Congress or you know, to the Capitol Hill or something. I don't know exactly where it is, but then he had to put a hand in the Bible and then say a thing, I swear on the Constitution, or in the Bible or on the Constitution, you know, and it's a whole ritual, right? And all these initiations as well. For example, university, you know, if you're a doctor, you go through a medicine is a very, very interesting example. If you study, I have friends that studied medicine, and in the first year they told me, man, I got to this class and we had this professor that is known because he's really rough, because he's the first one who is teaching about, you know, working on dead bodies, you know. So the first thing this guy did was like invite them to eat a lot of things like sweets and chocolate and have a beer and soda and be like that, hanging out and you know, while teaching them, and then okay, open a curtain and there's a dead body there, and most of them are puking, vomiting. First time they see a dead body, like in the decomposing, you know, and this idea of this professor is like, okay, you need to, you know, get rid of all these things that it naturally makes you react against and have aversion to that. You have to get rid of all those stuff so that you can really go deep in the study of this thing. All the fear, the disgust, the thing. So it's the same thing. It's an initiation, you know, that you have to get rid of layers of conditionment of that for the normal people. They're always going to be there. You have them, but you have to get rid of all these things so that you can really go deep into that and study, you know, deeply. So then afterwards, you know, there's a graduation, a lot of exams and stuff, a graduation, when there's a ritual, you know, and then also like a consultation in the hospital is also some kind of a ritual, an operation, surgery, you know, all these specialists, you know, initiated, dressed in the same way. I think Charles Einstein was using this example, you know, dressed in the same way, with certain tools and stuff and doing all these things and with a certain language, you know. So it's the same. The only thing is that, you know, we have this thing of innovation, and indigenous people, they have this thing of root, of source, of connecting back to the source. And of course, the big difference is that our science is the science of the material, of the matter, you know, material. You know, if it's not material, even if it's energy, we consider energy, but because we can put it into material things and, you know, accumulate it, measure it, and these kind of things. You cannot see energy, but we can see the devices that accumulate it, where it goes through, you know, and what it does in the matter, right? But other, you know, ancient sciences, indigenous knowledges are, you know, this expansion from the material to the immaterial, that in the beginning through stories are just stories, so you have to believe in them. But once you start moving forward in the stages of apprenticeship, those things that are immaterial are becoming real because you experience them. Normal people cannot see them, cannot enter that, cannot communicate with these invisible things. But once you get these initiations and you go forward in this path of learning this particular science, then it's an expansion of the border of the real, from the material to the immaterial. So it's really real, you know. And then, of course, also in indigenous people, you have specialists and non-specialists. And non-specialists relate to those stories as we do, as like beliefs, you know. It's like the Big Bang. You ask a scientist, maybe somebody can, you know, do all the science and explain it all. But most of the people, they just believe in this story of the Big Bang as a myth. We have a relationship to that, even if because what? Because the scientists tell us. But we don't really understand the science behind. We just accept it, and it's a belief, right? And that's something very interesting, you know. And of course, you know, this is what makes, you know, impossible to say, oh, what the Shipibo think about, or what the Tubu think about, or what Americans think about, you know. You have people that guide somehow the ideas and the opinions of people, but it's, of course, totally different, you know. Yeah.
So you mentioned this concept of seeing things that are invisible, seeing things that maybe we don't have access to in this reality. From your experience, what is the medium that these indigenous people are using to get in touch with that? Or what are the mediums? Because obviously there's different ways.
Well, it depends. Exactly, there are different ways, and even if it's the same tools from one people to another, they change the use and the stories behind and the thing, you know. You have different things. Like plants, like ayahuasca, peyote, San Pedro, yopo, and these kind of things that produce, you know, that what they call a altered state of consciousness, that you can, with, you know, with the proper use of that and proper guidance, you can really learn how to enter these other worlds, you know, and see from these other dimensions, let's say, you know, see things that we cannot see with the physical eyes, you know. But then you have others, like the people in the Sierra Nevada, for example, that is like from early age, the training, like only by the use of concentration, helped by the use of the coca leaves and tobacco, and are very, very subtle, you know, but it's basically the concentration, you know, how to, through the training of the mind, you know, then you can access these other realms, like your spirit travel, dream, and communicate with spirit, have spirit allies to go do things for you and come back with information, or, you know, really impact the material world from, you know, this concentration. So like the mammals is what they do, you know. And also, for example, Eastern traditions, you know, like Buddhists, or, you know, that these people that use only the meditation and the work with the body, like yoga, to really attain a high level of consciousness that allows to really navigate in different realms, you know, of the invisible, you know. So in the end, you know, as I was saying in the beginning, it's all about method, and it's not because, like, oh, I'm gonna drink ayahuasca for a year or 2 years and I'm gonna, you know, see that. Yeah, you can have one ceremony of ayahuasca and enter these other worlds and say, like, okay, this is real. I had the experience that this is exactly real. But to really know how to navigate in there, and to really bring from there information that is reliable for not only for you, because in the indigenous people, this doesn't exist only for me, you know. Theoretically, it's about the community, it's about the nation, you know. You need to bring information that is not only serve you, but it's going to serve the society, you know. And for this to be reliable is years and years of training. There's no way to avoid that. You know, and this is a constant in all these indigenous people. Whatever the method is, whatever the tool is, it's years of training until it is reliable, and your society can trust that you're a specialist and that you're going to do this for the benefit of all, you know.
There was something interesting. It happened in the States, and it was this video that went viral of these doctors talking about the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine. And it was very interesting because one of the main women, the doctors speaking to the pros of it, afterwards it came out that she had these beliefs of sickness could come from contact with demons, and you know, that was part of her work and part of her worldview. And it was very interesting seeing how discredited she was, and really by, especially in the US, I think it mainly came from the people who consider themselves the most liberal, the most open-minded, but they were so quick to dismiss her because she was a medical doctor, and yet she was talking also about things in terms of spirits and demons. And so it, you know, we certainly do seem to have this prejudice towards this potentially other way of looking at things. So when you're talking about these people that are going into potentially these altered states or through concentration and seeing things that we can't necessarily see with the eye, what do you think that is? Because for so many people around the world, that is something very real. And even from a shamanic point of view, many shamans say something in a similar way, which is those other worlds, or those other states that they're coming into contact with, they would call that reality. It's just a different reality. And in many cases, they would say it's more real than what we consider the real world. From how I take that is because in that state, we have access to things that in this reality, which is also a reality, but we are limited. We're limited by time, by space, by our senses. But in that state that people are having access to, they're not necessarily bound by that. So what do you think that is? That other reality or that altered state? What do you think that's giving these people access to?
Well, first, it's probably interesting to mention. I think it's very interesting to mention. We might be the only civilization in the world that negates the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah. Okay. We have religions. We believe in angels, or saints, or the Holy Ghost, or this kind of things. But again, this is just a matter of belief, of faith. It's very few that have an experience, a real experience of that, you know. And there's a very strong separation, really clear separation between religion or religious thought and science. Whereas in indigenous people, there's no such separation. It's the same thing. The deep knowledge, the deep science of healing, for example, is totally related in the whole system. There's no separation, right? The mamos in the Sierra, the Arhuacos or the Cogis, they would say that, you know, the Aluna, this dimension where things are created first in thought, in spirit, and then they manifest in this reality as material, no? They sometimes I heard them say like, oh, that's the real reality. The real reality, you know. This is a reality, but that other reality is more real. And there's something interesting about that story they use, you know, like that is more or less like, think about this, like if we're spirit, yeah, let's agree for now that we have a soul, right? This soul, when it's there in a luna, there's no boundaries, there's no separation, there's just oneness, full and interconnectedness. Then we come and incarnate here, and then we're basically trapped in a body that has very clear borders from all the rest of things, you know? And then we have these senses that are very limited. Even comparing to other animals, our senses are really limited, right? We see very, like a fraction, and we hear a fraction of what dogs hear. You know, we taste a fraction of, you know, our senses as a species is very, very limited, you know? But we came to this agreement that only what can be, you know, digested by our senses is real, all the rest not. Or that we invent some tools that allow us to see things that our eyes not see, but to see eventually with these eyes. Even if we have a microscope, you know, it allows these eyes to see the very, very little. A telescope allows these eyes to see the very, very far away, you know. So we are limited in these senses, and all these people say like, man, these senses are tricky. They don't allow you to see the real reality. Don't believe those senses right away. You know, there's even, you know, the Maya that in Sanskrit the Hindus would say, you know, the Maya, you know, this other reality that is. We're living in this world of illusion, right? Maya. And yeah, that's the thing. Also, the Tubu would say in the story of origin, you know, Tubu coming from Sirius, hearing to this longing of this society that became sanguinary and mediocre, had fallen into the well of nostalgia. lost society, destroyed society, longing, please help, you know. Then Tubu hears that from Sirius, all the way in the, I don't know, in the center of the galaxy. And he decides to come to help to rebuild. He transcends 12 dimensions. He arrives in this planet, in the Earth. And when he gets on top of the green canopy, he stops because he realizes that this is absolute madness, that this is the great theater of life. That's how that story starts, you know. It's like, you know, if you're a kid and you start from the beginning saying like, this is a theater of life. We're just playing a role and we're getting lost in our roles, forgetting who we really are. Spirits coming from somewhere else, you know, coming to have this experience, but since we're trapped here, then we think that only this is the reality. So this society is systems, full systems that englobe all aspects of human life, so that humans find this reconnection, because we get disconnected. And to keep that connection with the whole, full intertwined web fabric of life, not just me individual, me with absolute freedom to do and think whatever I want. No, you know, you have to really do all the things constantly, the work, eating, producing, healing, prayer, ritual, everything is there to remind us that everything is connected, that it's no sense to think of ourselves of separate to anything, you know. And I think this is a constant in the deep indigenous or ancient wisdoms. Yeah. It's totally, you know, the opposite of what we have done in our civilization, right?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Mika and the Tubu, and before the podcast started, we both took Mambe. I'm probably going to get criticized because the few times I've taken Mambe during this podcast, everyone thinks it's horrible because my teeth are green and. But Mambe is a really interesting medicine, and I think it's a medicine a lot of people aren't familiar with. And you know, you've done a lot of work with Mika, who's a member of this group called the Tubu, who come from the Valpes region and around the Apaporis River in Colombia. And Mika's a guy I have a lot of respect for. We sat a number of times with him in ceremony, and I really admire, you know, being an indigenous person who was thrown off of his land, and his I think parents were killed by the FARC, the rebel group in Colombia, and yet, you know, he really seems, one of the things I really found very fascinating when he was talking was this idea that it wasn't inherently someone's fault. You know, it seems like a really easy default position to take of like, it was their fault. It was the Spanish fault or the Portuguese fault for conquering us. And you know, obviously there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, the history of the people of the Amazons is devastating. For anyone who's interested in that, there's a really good book called, I think, Tree of Rivers, which documents that. And I mean, it's a horrible history. But one thing I found very powerful that he said was that the Spanish and the Portuguese, they essentially just finished the work that we had already started because we had lost our way, we had lost our story, and that's why they were able to come and to conquer. But he's a fascinating guy. So I'm wondering maybe if you can talk a little bit about maybe the Tubu. I mean, I know you're not an expert, but from the time you've spent with him, what have you learned from their way of working? They have a really powerful way of relating to the story. Before they work with any plant, it's essential that the story is told. And I mean, I remember sitting with him one time, and it's something that I still can't really explain, but he was speaking about something, and I don't even remember what the hell he was speaking of. But I remember there was like this contact, this locking of our eyes, and I felt like something was downloaded to me, and I can't really explain it other than it seemed like some sort of nonverbal transmission, and it was extremely powerful. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your time with him, or the Tubu, or what you've taken to be, relevant or powerful from that tradition.
Mm-hmm. Well, first, fortunately, Emika's parents are alive. I met them. Really, really extraordinary old couple. He's like 95 and she's like 94. And they are really, really amazing. They speak very, very little Spanish, but wow, you can feel their power. But when he said that my parents were killed, it's because these are people that live, all the village live in one big house. So all the adults are the parents of the children. You know, there's not really strong particular attachment between, of course, a mother is always a mother, but a father is a father of many, of others. And the mothers, they take care of all the children, and they relate to the elders like father, mother. So yeah, there was a terrible history of, as you said, first with the missionaries, and then, eventually the army, and then the guerrillas. And in the end, because the power of these people is the power of their stories and in their ways, from the Maloca, from the house. The house is something very, very, very important in all these peoples. It's like the center of something. They call it, they would say, Umuni Bararo. It's like point of origin of a proposal. You want to have a proposal then you have to build a house for that proposal. And that house will grow in power, spiritual power, as the people that are holding this proposal are working and developing, manifesting it, So the FARC and the army, they were realizing that from these Malocas in the Amazon, there was this thought and instruction that no indigenous people should go to this war, that should enroll in any of these armies, because it was not their war. So what they did, they started killing all the Maloqueros, all the keepers of the Malocas. They put bombs in most of the Malocas and destroyed them, as a means of destroying this thought that was so powerful, until eventually they had to flee. And now they're living in the slums of Bogota. It's a very sad story, but at the same time, it's the opportunity of them to first to put in practice their own story, because in their ancient stories, they knew that this was going to happen. The elders were telling them, we have been exterminated already, They were like, what are you talking about? We're here, we're good, And now this generation, like, oh my God, now I understand what the elders were saying in their stories that we're living in. And this, this brings also the opportunity of sharing these stories to the outside world, and this knowledge to be to go out there and be helpful for these new times of humanity, which most of these people call it the new dawn of humanity. you know, a time of the union of all the different people. The Tubu people, it's one nation among a myriad of like different nations in the Valdez region in Colombia and in the Rio Negro in Brazil that border. They're exogamic. It means that you always have to find a partner in another nation that speaks another language. You cannot marry with somebody from your own nation. You know, if you're Tubu, you cannot marry Tubu. If you're Desana, you cannot marry Desana. If you're Tucano, you cannot marry Tucano. You need to find another one. And there's some things that are, you know, privileged combinations. What this makes is villages that if you are in a Tubu village, for example, I am Tubu, my wife is Cubeo. My sister is Tubu, but her husband is Desana. My other sister is Tubu, but her husband is Tucano. My mother is Tucano and my father is Tubu. You know? And I speak to my mother in her language and I speak to my father in his language. And I speak to everybody in my language and they respond in their own language.
Mm.
And they don't mix languages. And these are languages, most of them are similar, but similar, let's say like Portuguese and Spanish, you know, you can easily get lost, right? Some are more close, but some are really different. Let's say English and German, you know? And in the ceremonies, in the rituals, in the mambeaderos, the ritual of the word, you know, every night they get together to use this medicine of mambe to share the word. Everybody speaks in their own language. There's no translation. And the most amazing thing that I think these people are bringing today out of the jungle to us, to the world, is this technology of the absolute respect of the other. That this notion that the other has something that I don't have. And he is a guardian of that particular kind of knowledge. And someday, maybe I will need that. And I need to do everything so that he thrives and he can do his mission of being the keeper of that knowledge. So it's a method, a constant set of rules and manners and a full system of respecting the other. There's never, if you have never seen in indigenous world, and especially in this kind of people, this idea of converting, of trying to convince the other that what I'm saying is the truth. There's not such a thing. You have your truth, I have my truth. Let's find out where our truths meet so that we can do something collectively. But you have to keep your thing and I have to keep my thing, because eventually they complement, they complete each other, you know? So for me, this is the most important thing. And this is, you know, important, relevant, and extremely beautiful, right? Because imagine, you know, the whole history of the Americas is a history of imposition of a point of view, of a belief system, you know? Like judging the other that, oh, you are savage, you're primitive, you're satanic, you know? You're working with the demon. You need to forget all these demonic things and believe in the true God, in the truth, the absolute truth that is written in this book. You know, this is a kind of idea that could not enter the mind of indigenous peoples here. But as he said, of course, this idea had already started with the big empires, with the Aztecs, the Incas, you know, these conquerors. This mind of conquest, you know, many people say, oh, it's human nature. It's not human nature. It's the way they teach us history, you know. History, the way they teach us history is a set of conquests and war and imposition, and who prevails tells a new story for, you know, and dominates, you know. So it's a full story of conquest and conquered and domination dominated, you know. And but this is not the full thing, you know, not at all. This is, they say, this is a particular kind of spirit that enters the mind of some of people when they lose their story of origin, and they because they lost this connection, they start inventing things, and they try to impose this new truth to the others. So in this, you know, for them, you asked this, you started this question about the mambe and ambil. No, it's a combination of coca and tobacco. The Tubus say that mambe and ambil are the possibility of a knowledge to be transmitted purely from generation to generation for thousands of years. So it's the Huitoto, also in Colombia, closer to Peru, by around Leticia, and also in Peru. They say that mambe and ambil is like the condition of the word of life, the sweet word of life, you know. And I say that this allows you to really start to really get out of this mind of separation and focusing on what separates us. You know, if we have a debate, like we tend to like try to find where the other is making a mistake or a flaw there, to say, oh, you said that, so that it's not like that. This is how, you know, it's a fight of egos. Who has the ultimate truth? But in this system, it doesn't work like that. You take ambil and you take mambe in order to get out of this mind of separation and to really focus and find where I connect with that other person, even if we're in a very difficult conflict. You know, tobacco is the possibility to connect deeper, you know, like the peace pipe, the chanupa. You know, you never started negotiations and everything before everybody had a puff from the chanupa, because it's the condition that we're not going to fight, that we're not going to lose the sweet word, that we're going to be focusing, connecting from our differences. You know, like the difference as the material, the raw material for a new weaving, for a new collective enterprise. You know, let's build a new village, let's build a new house. Yeah, but you know, are we gonna build it my way? No, let's use all the differences as the raw material so that we make something new that is really connected and not get lost, you know, in this great theater of life, you know. And
Yeah.
in this, for example, if you want, I can share a little bit of the metaphor of ambil,
Yeah.
you know, because this is really, really, you know, that Huitoto will say, son, we are tobacco. We are exactly like the tobacco plant. If you see a tobacco plant in the jungle, the big leaf that it's, you know, kind of sticky and it's kind of hairy, so it's always dirty. It's always mud or dust or the little path of a caterpillar that passed and left there's a trace, you know. So when you see it, you say tobacco is dirty, right? And when you touch it, it's kind of rough, you know. It's kind of soft in the part, but it's a hard leaf, you know. And if you chew it, it's super bitter. So if you see with these senses, you will say tobacco is what? Is dirty, is rough, is hard, and it's bitter. And the others say, be careful. Don't get trapped in the senses of this world of illusion. This is the real essence of tobacco. It needs a process of cleansing, of softening by boiling, of taking the essence and purifying it, and then with word, with stories, with dances, and then eventually have this pure thing. You know, they take this salt that is made from it's a long process that can last days. The salt is made from these leaves, from these small palms that grow by the creeks. They dry them in the sun, then they burn them. They take the ashes. They take a leaf like funnel. They put the ashes and they pour lukewarm water slowly until it filters. When it all filters all this water, then they take the water, they boil it down fully, and then they have this salt, very strong salt, and they mix with this. So this is you know, this the metaphor is like we are exactly like that. When we meet with the others, say we're going to have a conversation because we want to do something new, or we have a conflict or something. When we come and meet the other, we come with all this dirtiness, things that got stuck on us on the way, you know. Stress from the day, all the problems, my wife did this, my son is sick, my neighbor didn't let me sleep. You get all these things that are disturbing, you know, and that's not you. Then you have all this roughness and then this hardness because life is hard. We need to fight for life and we need to work hard, and you know, you need to, you know, push and all these things that, you know, that makes that, you know, then you need to be tough, right? But that's not you. That's something that you learned on the way. That's something that you had to do because of conditioning and because of circumstances. And then we are bitter, and we have all this bitterness that not only belong to us, but it's like generations and generations of separation, of conflict, of women abused, you know, forgotten, not heard, not satisfied, you know, suffering women, bitterness. We carry all that. So when they say, when you take ambil and you're talking to the other and we're sharing the ambil, it is like you take it and it's like you are invoking the spirit so to allow you to see what is the essence of the other person beyond what appears to be dirty, hard, and bitter. Beyond that, what is the essence? What is that person really wanting to express? Where do we unite? And in the same time, when I speak, I invoke this spirit of tobacco, so that nothing that comes from my tongue throws out this dirtiness, roughness, and bitterness that I might be carrying, so that we can really meet and connect, you know. And then the mambe, of course, brings you all this energy and a more acute attention and concentration for this. And, you know, it allows you to stay whole nights listening to people talking, telling stories with full concentration. But most importantly, that we thought would say, when you have the mambe in your mouth, it's sweet. And it reminds you that the word needs to be sweet. Because the split moment that your word loses its sweetness, it gets disconnected. It's not anymore the word of life. It's not the word of spirit. It's not the word that wants to be woven in this space. You're putting of your own bitterness, your own hardness, and your own dirtiness, you know, the sweet word. So this is mambe and bil, but you know, these are medicines that are fairly new for Westerners. They're coming out, you know, even if like what was his name? This great ethnobotanist. I have Dolmatov in my head, but it's not him. Anyways, it will come back. This great ethnobotanist from Harvard. He was telling his students, everybody should do this.
Richard Evans Schultes?
Yeah, Schultes. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, he loved it, and he wrote a few things about it, and you know, and he was telling people like, oh man, everybody should do this, right? And but of course, afterwards, war on drugs and this, you know, this idea of coca, like really like demon thing, drug and stuff. And I think that's the most hypocrite story of our times about coca, you know. A war on this drug is the highest hypocrisy of our times, of our governments, of our leaders, you know, of our society. Because what coca really is really, it's the most amazing medicine. And now it's getting out there. But the problem is that it seems easy. Oh, I put some mambe in my mouth and I take a bil and I have this little subtle thing that allows me to work, to be more clear, to write, to whatever. But we forget again that all these things have method and they're inscribed in a full system of knowledge, of life, right? And this is what we Westerners, it's difficult for us to understand. We keep on grabbing things from the indigenous world and using them in our own way. Oh, I know better, you know. But look how we know better, you know, what we've done with tobacco and with coca until now. Probably the plants that create more destruction and death in our societies. Because we don't dare to go sit with the elders and really listen and experience what is it about, understanding the full system of the other, you know. And the taboo, for example, to become a leader, one of the leaders in the Maloka of, you know, because they don't have one leader, it could be, but as like 9, it's a council of 9 different roles, right? And to become one that sits in that council, the apprenticeship is years. First, you're born listening to the stories. Then when you're 14, 15, 12, the women, you can decide if you're going to undertake all the the ritual, the path of apprenticeship, of training, you know. So then you have all the dietas and then, you know, deep study of all the plants of the canoe, where the you know, the anaconda canoe, they say, where they have this set of plants. So it's a deep study of all the system of these plants. That's like 8 years. And then after these 8 years, then you have to go out for another eight years to other tribes to learn from the other, learn their languages, learn their ways, be accepted, recognized as one of them, one by one, until eventually you come back and you have, you know, you speak a lot of languages, you know exactly the others, how they think, you're recognized by the others as one of them. Then only then you can sit and be a leader of your nation, because everybody knows that you are going to be able to understand and fully respect the others, and you do everything to avoid conflict, to solve the conflict, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, seems like there's a lot of lessons there for the time we're living in.
Exactly.
You mentioned this idea of the anaconda canoe, and I find that story quite fascinating. Do you remember the plants that were on that? Because it's this idea that, I mean, I'm sure you can talk about it better, but this idea that these plants were somehow given or sent to humanity for very specific reasons, and that each one of them has their place and their role and their story. Are you able to recount a bit about that? Are you?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Well, again, this notion of the anaconda canoe is shared by many different peoples. So each nation will have their own version of it, and each elder in a maloca will have a particular version adapted to a particular reality in that moment. You know, these are moving, alive stories, you know, that for them it will never make sense to write them down. You know, they say it's really extremely dangerous to write down these things, because then people do with that whatever they want and they use it in their own benefit. Rings a bell? So this idea of the anaconda canoe, the Desana, the Tucano, I read this book from a Desana guy, and he explained how it comes from around Rio de Janeiro, but it's spiritual, you know. It's a canoe that under the river with the humanity that is being created in spirit first, and then along the way up north in the rivers, the different malocas of the different nations pop up, so that, you know, they are being created, right? The Tubu comes from Syria, so when he came, there were other people living in this earth. So when he gets out of there with this mission of rebuilding these fret societies, falling into the well of nostalgia, he how to say, he takes a ride in the canoe. It's not his canoe, you know, like, okay, jump in, we're taking you, you know, like he was kind of hitchhiking. Yeah, in this canoe, because Tubu understood in the beginning, when he gets here as his energy, spirit, he gets here, it's like, oh my God, this is absolute madness. This is the great theater of life. I cannot play the only protagonic role, the lead role here. I'm gonna get lost. in this madness, right? So he goes to the depths of the ocean, on Pico de Opatore, and then he gets this body, this carcass, and then he emerges in Umuri Bararopatore, point and origin of transformation, which they recognize being in Rio de Janeiro, and then where they say, oh, in the depths of the Amazon, they say, if you go there and see with this beautiful, with these physical eyes, and with the senses, you will see the beautiful beaches and big green mountains and rocks and exuberant nature. But if you take the medicines that allows you to break the veil of time, yeah, and enter in other dimensions, you would see the reality as it is. And these big mountains are actually spiritual malokas. And in one of them, Tubu sat and experienced for the first time the power of the word. And then he started calling these other beings to sit, to create his maloka, these 9 roles to sit and play a particular role and help him in this mission of rebuilding a sanguinary society like ours, right? But then even having all these 9 other beings with him, really powerful beings, masters in their roles, he realized it was not enough. And that's why they proposed the Anaconda Canoe, where they have all these medicines that appeared in a particular moment in their adventure for addressing particular situations, you know. For the Desana, for example, Mambe and tobacco were already there from the beginning. The great grandma of the world was sitting in the darkness in her maloca with her mambe, ipadu, and smoking her cigar. She already had that from the beginning, you know. From others, it was created other way. The Tubu say that the coca was given to them by people of the north, and they say today, oh, it's probably what the ancestors of the Kogi, the Arhuaco, the people from the Sierra Nevada that gave them this medicine. That eventually they dried, put into a powder, mixed with ashes, and made this ipadu, mambe. So in the Anaconda Canoe, you have the tobacco for smoking, that is for cleaning territory, they say, like the body or the spaces. You have the mambe, you have the ambil that I already explained, and you have the murundi, which we know as rapé, you know, snuff, tobacco, that they say is for filtering, you know, in the sense that, you know, many people want to become shaman, but then, you know, Tubu comes and gives a blast with a rapé, and then 99% of them say like, oh no, it's not for me anymore. You know? And then you have the medicines that are for they call a benuni, like the mirror of time, the column of time space, or space time. I don't know how you say in English. You know, the column of space time, which are the medicines that are used to explore in other dimensions. There you have mushrooms, San Pedro, peyote, and angel trumpet. Yeah. You know, San Pedro and peyote, they're not from their territory. And you would say, why? You know, so like, and the answer is, in the ancient times, people were exchanging. There were networks of exchange of knowledge and ritual and medicine. So even if those medicines were not in their territories, they kept the stories of those medicines. A Benuni, you know. So when they meet them now, these medicines, I know this. It's a Benuni. It's Peyote or it's San Pedro. I know this, exactly how this works because I know all the stories and the dances and the chants that contain codes, they say. And then after this, the first four ones, tobacco, mambe, ambil, and rapé, they say this is the medicines that can be used daily. For, you know, all day long, every day, no problem. With one condition. You can use them for working, for different things, but you need to give them their proper time and space. All these medicines for Tubu, they were born from a woman, from Diato Yepamasa, which can be understood metaphorically as Mother Earth. Diato Yepamasa. Yepamasa is the people of the evolution of the earth, the Tucano, you know, Yepamasa. So Diato, when Tubu comes here, he marries with Diato Yepamasa, with a Tucano, you know, and she's the one birthing all these medicines. But it's also, you know, like the masculine coming from the universe, from the sun, from above, and the feminine from the earth, you know, bringing all this, or life, right? So since they were born as a woman, they say all these medicines are women, and they have this feminine energy in the sense that also, and they demand a lot of respect. Cannot abuse them. If you abuse them, eventually they will collect, and you don't even realize what happened to you, you know. And especially these four first ones, because they are so subtle, and you know the effects are not immediate, not very strong, and but the basic idea is that you need to give them their proper time and space. If you have to work and you use some rapé in the day and mambe or for working and doing other stuff, then in the evening you need to go to the mambeadero and sit and use these medicines for what they were born for. You can use them for other things, but given their proper time and space means that in the night you sit and you share the word, share the stories and this. And if you're alone, just review your day, what happened, what you did, it's a revision, and then what is needed to be done the next day. And this is a way to honor these medicines, you know. Anyway, so in the end of then after these four medicines that serve for the like Abenuni for exploring in other dimensions, the mirror of the world, the column of space-time, time and space, they become the three queens of knowledge, most powerful for the Tubu, which are the yopo, marijuana, cannabis, and ayahuasca. These are the three queens of knowledge. You know, they share similar stories, and they bring the possibility to really go see our reality from other dimensions and bring down very strong knowledge from other dimensions as well, you know. And they demand a much stronger respect, you know. It's like they should be done only in ceremony, and they have a more powerful diet, you know. Yeah. Restrictions, right? Sexual restrictions, food restrictions, and this kind of thing. And in any case, then not, you know, a full story of the origin of these medicines, and in basically all indigenous nations, you know, the stories of the medicines should have like 5 times, 5 chapters, let's say, you know, which are, you know, where they were born and what for, you know, what did they heal, what are the restrictions, you know, what is the rules of them, what are the consequences of those rules if you break those rules, if you don't respect, what are the consequences, and how to heal those consequences, because we're human and we fail.
Mm-hmm.
So these 5 things is a more or less, not like it's like more like an anthropological point of view of trying to understand the structure of the thing, you know. So it's a strong reduction of it as well. But this, for me, this is basic things, five things, to have a full story. The story of a medicine is the guide of it. If you don't know a story, you should not use the medicine, they say. For example, for the Tubu, they have the frog of Cambo. It lives in the jungle. They know the chant and they know the thing, and then they know it helps for different diseases and they can help for many things, but they will never use it. Why? Why don't you use it if you have it? If it's so easy, you know? If we Westerners can go to a 1 week retreat, training Cambo retreat, and then become Cambo practitioners, why don't you do it if you're a master? Because I am an orphan of that story. I don't know that story. There are other peoples around us who know the story. So if I need it, I go to them because they are the keepers of that story. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, great. So maybe let's shift gears. So we worked together, I don't know, for the last 7-10 years, something like that, at a Amazonian plant healing center called the Temple of the Way of Light, and we mostly work with a group called the Shipibo, who probably a lot of people watching this are familiar with. Some may not be. But they come from a long lineage of working with plants for healing, for knowledge. But certainly the one that's become the most popular is one of the ones you mentioned in this Anaconda Canoe, which is ayahuasca. And it seems like especially this medicine has become very, very prominent in this time, and many people are drawn to working with it from the outside. So maybe you can talk a bit about your experience with ayahuasca, with the Shipibo, what you've learned from them. What is that medicine to you, and then maybe also what your experience is, actually working as a guide or a facilitator, and what you've seen that plan is actually doing, because it's obviously, from your anthropological point of view, that's one thing, but then also stepping into that role kind of as the bridge between the people working with it who come from that tradition, and then the people coming from outside to actually work with that plant. Yeah, and just what your experience is, and what you've discovered.
Well, actually, I started my journey with ayahuasca way before I met the Shipibo. My first time I was in Iquitos with a healer from the Ashuar nation from the Pastaza River in Peru. Very, very powerful healer, Don Romulo. He's still out there. He might be like around 90 now. Lives in Iquitos. Very powerful. And then since I was living in Europe, I met this Ecuadorian healer that came from this. He studied with the Shuar in Ecuador. These are jibaros, you know. This, for people to have a notion of who these people are. They are most known for making these shrink heads. You know, they were warriors, and they would do these shrinking heads of the other warriors and put them as a belt, you know. So this very powerful magic and knowledge of these people over there. But he learned also with the people of the Sacred Fire of Itzachilatlan, which is a kind of a syncretic movement that mixes Andino-Amazonian traditions with northern, you know, Lakota and Native American church things. So they do sweat lodges and vision quests and sundance and these kind of things, and they do ayahuasca and San Pedro, and they created this system. So he learned a lot from them, and then he parted ways, did his own thing. So he was really my first teacher, you know. So we would do tours in Europe, and you know, I would be his translator and assistant, and you know, many ceremonies and hundreds of people along more than like years, until eventually I went to Peru and I met Maestra Inés Sanchez, this amazing Shipibo woman, that she absolutely blew my mind. Everything that I thought ayahuasca was like, oh my God, you know, it's like really deep knowledge and technology, you know. And the first time she sang to me in ceremony, and she healed me from some pains that I had, and I saw her like just singing to me, moving things inside my body and pulling out these threads of dark light and stuff, and then this pain never came back. I was like, wow, this is what I was looking for. This is, you know, the highest thing I've ever seen. And so I started working for them, and we did many tours in Europe and brought a lot of people to Peru. We started working on the temple as well with them, and she had been working on the temple before as well. That when I met her, she wasn't, and then eventually I brought her back. Her daughters, who are also healers, and eventually her youngest son, Jose, who is also a very good Onaya. The name of the Shipibo healers is Onaya, the ones who have knowledge, the ones who work with the plants. And for me, the Shipibo, they have developed this exquisite system, like it's of working with this plant as a, you know, as a way of knowledge, of learning, to connect with the plant realm. This is people that are really connected with the plants, you know, and with the plant spirits, and the precision of their Icaros, their songs. It's really beautiful, and it's like surgery, you know, spiritual surgery, that from those realms of spirit can really impact the body, you know, the matter, the relationships, the territory. You know, it's really deep technology. And yeah, so the Shipibo for me are these people that have developed this really special way of working with the medicine, in the sense that it's really really precise, right? Beyond of being really beautiful, right? Their songs are super beautiful, but it's really deep technology. For them, ayahuasca is, first of all, well, first is like the entrance, like for training, for learning, to really enter these other dimensions. And then they have this system of doing dietas, like long periods of time learning with different plants. So they would take one tree and take the bark and then go in isolation into the jungle for a certain period of time, months, and then get a strong connection of these plants with this plant spirit. And it's like big, let's say, like it becomes part of you. It's like you are ingesting it, but through this spiritual work, yours and with the help of a master that makes the connection, then it is part of you. It lives in you as well. So this is the idea of the dieta. You do a dieta so that spirit is a part of you. You integrate it in yourself, in your body. So they have all, an apprenticeship of Shipibo is like a long series of long dietas. The more dietas and the more different plants you have, is a more like an arsenal that you have. And what they say is that these plants are the true teachers. So the knowledge really comes from those spirits, connecting with them, and those are the ones who are bringing the teachings. The teacher, the master, the physical teacher, the human teacher, makes the connection and guides through that. And also you have the whole system, no? You have the language, you have the melodies that are socially transmitted. But how this really work and when to use it, how to use it, this is the plants who tell you. This is something very difficult for us to understand, no? Of course. And many people think like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Peru, to the jungle, and be 1 year doing some dietas with a teacher, and then I become a shaman, and I can go back to the States or to Europe and run ceremonies and make a nice living with this by helping a lot of people. It comes with a very, very beautiful intention most of the time, but sometimes we forget that we stay in a very, very, very superficial state, very superficial. The more you learn from this, the more you hang out with these elders and really experience what they do. For me, for example, it was like, oh my God, it's impossible. I should have, if I wanted to get close to that and to really be able to assume the responsibility of people's life and people's healing, I should have started when I was 10, 12, 15, Now it's too late. I'm too old for this, So, yeah. And then the work that we've been doing at the temple, this center in Iquitos, it's really beautiful. It allowed me to work with a lot of Shipibo healers, as you know, and be the bridge, and especially witness a lot of healing processes, people really changing their lives, you know. This is the most beautiful thing, you know. It's like maybe we should do, I don't know how to, this idea like we need to do something on like showing people how they come and how they leave, you know, before and after, you know. And when, you know, the discourse, the narrative they can have on their own healing many times is their testimonials. It's really, really powerful, right? We've been working very closely with the temple, and like really elevating the game, because of course this is a place like many others in Peru, you know, like Westerners that come to Peru have an experience with ayahuasca and say, wow, man, this is it. This is the most amazing thing. I have to, you know, I'm going to devote my life to this. And I want many, many of my people from the West to come and experience this. And maybe this would be a possibility to change the world, to really bring a change in the world, you know. And, but we're coming from such different worlds, you know. Any Westerner that goes there, and then a Shipibo or indigenous healer that are there, it's very, very difficult to connect and to build trust and to really speak the same language. Not only language, but you know, the whole cultural thing, and especially the history of trauma. You know, it brings a lot of distrust. So it's very, very difficult to create a space where it's safe, and you have really a team of, you know, Westerners and indigenous and people healers working as a team. And in the past 3 years, I would say, we have been doing this work of really elevating that and really becoming, starting to become a team, really, and not this thing of like a company where, you know, doctors come and work and do their work and then they leave and work for gringos and get their money and go, which is, it's almost unavoidable. But now we're getting to a point where we are stepping up into something new, where really we can start to understand that we can be complementary. You know, that we hold a knowledge that they don't, and they hold a knowledge that we don't. And if we get together, respecting fully our differences and our paths, then we can build something new, you know, that is really useful for humanity. So this is what we're working on, like in the different projects. Like we're developing a program for veterans, war veterans, and a program with for leaders, you know, business leaders and political leaders. The idea is to you know, to have the most impact, you know, and also the impact for the community, the Shipibo community itself. And this is a place that for in 13 years, the profits that were all through an NGO that was created as a sister organization. So all the profits go through there to back to the Amazon and to the Amazonian people. So it's a business, but the profit is designed to go back. So it's really beautiful. And you know, it has been really amazing to be working there, you know, sharing this time with you, also, you know, learning a lot with different people, and what we're doing now with the Shipibo I was called to be the um, advisor of the president of the new Shipibo Healers Association. So it was created recently, a couple of years ago. So it's you know, bringing unity to the Shipibo healers, you know, and also like strengthening this association to really interact with the world, because as you said, you know, ayahuasca is going out there in the world widely, and it like, you know, there's ceremonies everywhere, you know, like in California and Europe and everywhere, and out of their context. And there's a lot of interest now also with this psychedelic sciences, you know, and this idea that psychedelics can be an alternative for mental health, you know. So there's a lot of interest, scientific interest in ayahuasca, but all the research that is not little, all the research that has been done about ayahuasca, being in pharmacology, clinical or chemical, biology, botanical, all these studies, they give very little, if any, space to the indigenous wisdom keepers. So now the idea of the, you know, with the bridge keepers also is like, how do we bridge these two sciences, you know, modern science and ancestral science? It's a great challenge that we're stepping into with the Shipibo Association, with the temple, with different associations in different parts of the world that are interested in different actors, no, in this ayahuasca global ecosystem, you know, globalized ayahuasca. So this is a very important thing. Like, you know, as a society, as a civilization, we have this idea that we can take something from its context and like a plant, take a plant, find its active principle, make a pill, and then give it to many, you know. And with ayahuasca, this is not going to work, you know. And even if it, you know, it works for certain things, in certain ways, it can be useful, it can be beneficial for many people, sure. But there's something fundamental that we need to change. We need to understand that this is theirs. They developed this medicine, not the Shipibo, all these different people in the Amazon. You know, so it's, they have a collective ownership of a patent that is not registered anywhere officially. But we need to consider, we need to understand that it's theirs, and everything that we do with that medicine, all the gifts and all the benefits that we get from it, then eventually we need to give back to the Amazon and back to the Amazonian people. You know, all the people, if you drink ayahuasca, if you say that, you know, ayahuasca is part of your life, you cannot say that, and you cannot pretend that it's okay if you're not doing something really actively for the Amazon and for indigenous people today. It's something very, very important that people need to understand, you know, because otherwise we keep on reproducing the same patterns of colonialism, of imperialism, of our ancestors. We need to get out of that mindset that we can take and do whatever we want with it, even with the best intentions. If we are not giving back to the Amazon and to indigenous people, then we're stealing. And we're just stealing, you know? Even if we get the most amazing epiphanies and insights of the greatness of God and the universe, and, you know, and it changes your life and you become illuminated for a day, or a month, and if you say like, oh my God, everybody needs to feel this and experience this so we can change the world. Even if you do that, even if you have the best intentions, but you're not giving back directly to the Amazon in any way or another, in reciprocity, then it's stealing, So this is what we're working now, like how do we bridge this? How do we put scientists, top-level scientists and top-level shamans working together? Develop a new narrative, a new epistemology, a new way of doing science. Then the only thing that we're asking for science is to be really scientific. What you were saying before, that woman that talks about the doctor said, oh, this thing comes from demons, and then she's ostracized, she's thrown away and criticized, but what we're asking for science is to be really, okay, this is something that people experience, but because of the underlying assumptions of science, you say that does not exist and cannot exist. It doesn't mean it doesn't, because people are experiencing it, and it's really making impact in people's lives. So let's study this really deeply with them. What are they seeing that we are not able to see? And what are we seeing that they are not able to see? And with this, this is the way that we make a really new paradigm of science, And
what do you think? You mentioned this idea of reciprocity and giving back. And so many people have come to the Amazon and as you said, have these amazing experiences. Do you think just the act of them exchanging in that kind of commerce, that whether it's paying money or, because that's usually the form it takes, although it could be some form of service, but usually paying money in exchange for these ceremonies, do you think that's sufficient giving back, or you think as an individual there's other ways that people can do that as well?
I think at the point that we are now, like in humanity, and especially now, with this pandemic and this situation, that is not enough. That is not sufficient. Going to the Amazon and paying for a healer for a ceremony and then going back home, that is not enough. What do you do with this? What you're paying for is a service for a moment, but the gifts that you're receiving, the healing that you're receiving, are you really comfortable with saying that you paid $100 for that? What else can you do? What is the calling of your soul that is like wanting something new, a better world, and what are you doing about it? When we do these things, when we enter these realms and we vomit our deepest demons and darkness, shadows, and then we liberate ourselves from things. If we don't do something with that really have an impact on our society, and especially back in the Amazon and indigenous peoples, then that gift, that power is stuck in you. And maybe you can do great things for yourself, but if you're not giving it back, then it's worthless. It's energy needs to flow, and paying an amount of money for a ceremony is you're paying for that service of that ceremony. But what you're receiving in that ceremony goes way beyond, right? Way beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And
one of the guys that,
we need to
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, no, and at these times, it's really the time when we need to get together, you know, to review our patterns, our civilization. What are we doing? What is wrong, and what can we change? You know, it's like the idea of like one thing after this pandemic, to go back as fast as possible back to normal is really a nonsense. Is really a nonsense. There's no time in history that we have been all together in the same situation. And to address this, really, it's not a vaccine that is going to change things. It's just making things worse in the same direction. This is a moment where we need to take these other ways of knowledge and see, how are you seeing this? What is your point of view in this problem that is our problem? You know, as we are giving so many millions to labs and to big pharma to develop a vaccine, we should also be investing in indigenous scientists, spiritual scientists, so that they can work on this and then share their findings, their knowledge, you know, their data, and then, you know, develop a new way of seeing the whole picture, you know, like these pieces of the puzzle. This is the time for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was interesting because there was this guy you've worked with, Romualdo, from the Arawak people. And it was very interesting because it was kind of this contrast, as you mentioned, of often we try and put things in this very logical or reductionist way of thinking. And so many people were asking him questions, and I found his answer was almost always the same, which was, you didn't make a payment. You're missing the payment. And he's not necessarily talking about, you know, giving money to something or someone, but that everything, there is a reciprocity of everything. And if we take and we don't give back in some way, that's where a lot of the imbalance comes from, or the dis-ease. We haven't found that ease. We haven't found that balance. Is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Yes. And it's good you mentioned this Arhuaco people. You said Arawak, but Arawak is nothing to do with the Arhuaco. Mm-hmm. Arawak is a linguistic family that, for example, the Ashaninka are from. Mm-hmm. You know, but the Arhuaco are from a different family. They're people from the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in the north of Colombia. Some of the most purest and deep technology of spirit related to the balance of the earth. It means the Kogi, the Arhuaco, the Wiwa, there was a Concuama also, but they lost their stories and their culture, their language. So basically these three nations, they share this system of knowledge. The Mamos are their specialists. They train from a very young age in the darkness and very, very strict and restrictions and training. The training is really, really powerful. And this is one of the people that really connect with only with the concentration. You know, they use the coca leaves and also a little paste of tobacco. So again, this principle of this combination of coca and tobacco, right? That brings a very subtle connection with spirit, but staying in this dimension, not getting a blast or, you know, like a high like ayahuasca can do or mushrooms or anything that you really go into somewhere else, you know. With this, you're here, but have this capacity, very subtle possibility of connection with spirit. Their role, they say, is to maintain the balance of the spiritual forces of the earth. And we are the ones who bring the imbalance, humans. Yeah, not only with our actions by destroying things or polluting or whatever, but also with our thoughts, with our emotions, with our minds, And basically this happens because we don't give back. It's the same principle. You say you eat an apple, right? Maybe you go to the supermarket and you pay for that apple. That money goes to a producer that bought many things, and it's a whole system of money. That money that you pay for the apple more or less covers all the whole costs of the work and materials of men, people, right? But they say, yeah, but for that apple to be there, what about the sun? What about the water? What about the earth? What about the stars? What about the wind? What about the little animals that made holes under the ground so that the roots could tap into water? What about, other plants that are around, that feed that plant? What about the animal that pass around and poo there and feeds that tree? All those beings need to be paid as well. And we're not. And how do you pay? With something that is really yours. What is the thing that is like really ours? That is only ours? Because our body is material that also comes from the earth. If you get people say like, I'm going to make an offering, and they take a little bit of tobacco or corn or flowers and make a little offering and stuff, and they give it. That's beautiful, but that's not real reciprocity, because all those materials come already from those forces, right? What is the one force that we have that is ours, that we can give to pay? The power of our mind, the quality of our concentration, the sacrifice of giving your time, your fasting, and spend hours and hours concentrating, fine-tuning, tapping into this connection, and with that concentration, give back, pay, they say. Everything is payment, everything is reciprocity. If you get something, you need to give back. And the only thing that we have that is really ours is that, our energy, our own concentration, they say. So whatever happens in our lives, or for example, people are doing, there's a lot of killings, homicide and stuff, and well, eventually there will be an earthquake somewhere else in the world, and they're monitoring all these things. Oh, there's been a lot of rapes this year, and there's going to be a tsunami. There's going to be floods or drought. All the things that we do that bring imbalance, that it will create something back from nature to try to restore that balance. Disease is the same thing, The spreading of a disease is also the same thing. It's like they say, well, the Arhuaco say, like, this thing was created, this virus, but even if it was created, it went way beyond what the ones who created expected to happen, And what is it doing? It's like the earth itself is like bringing the balance. It's like telling us, like, guys, stop it. Just stay home, leave us alone. you know, and just see what happens to the world when you guys slow down. When you stay at home and stop doing so much. Stop doing so much. Why do you need to do so much? Why? Just observe. Look at nature. How beautiful, and how life can thrive when you stay home. You know. So they say, like, you know, this is because we are creating this imbalance, and we need to pay back. You know. So yeah, it's a similar thing. You know, if you get there's something interesting also, like anthropologists say, you know, there's 3 times in the gift. You know, there's giving, receiving, and giving back in due time. Without that possibility of giving back, you know, and without giving back, you're creating an imbalance. So even this idea of charity, coming from the best intention, now there's a lot of attention in the Amazon and people giving a lot of donations and stuff. It's great because it brings a lot of relief, but eventually it will create imbalance. Why? Because it's not giving those people the possibility to give back. You want to have when somebody that is super rich give a large amount of money to somebody, knowing that that person can never give back, is maintaining this unbalance. I am more powerful than you, you know. And this happens in everything in nature, you know, everything in nature. When you receive something from nature, this life, then eventually, like constantly, this culture of together in specific days to pay for all of us. It's their work. Oh, now that star is in this position, so we need to go to that place. And they go, the whole community, children, women, elders, and they sit for a week, you know, 4 days with very little food, only 3-4 hours sleep, and they are just sitting there concentrating to bring balance in Africa, in Asia, in the States, balance for the plants, for the animals, for everything. It's their work. And we're not paying them for that. We're not giving them back or any recognition for the work they're doing. And we think, again, it's like, oh, it's their belief system. Oh, they believe in that. It's like this missing, that, you know, that accumulation of knowledge, of centuries, of generation of specialists, of people that study deeply, that are really scientists of spirit, you know. It's not scientists of books. They're not reading scriptures to say, to try to interpret scriptures. They're trying to understand how to navigate and communicate with spirit and how to bring that balance in the world, you know. And they need recognition. And we need to understand how that works. And science needs to be very scientific and start, you know, we're doing something with them. Let's play. Let's do real science. You know, this is a time for that. The time is calling us for that. And all the indigenous leaders, spiritual leaders that I know are saying the same thing. This is the time that we need to unite. This is the time that we need to get together, leave aside our differences and try to connect. And then from our differences, really try to complement each other and bring something new, a new dawn for humanity.
Yeah, beautiful. You had mentioned this idea, going back to ayahuasca, of how you almost wish there could be like this testimonial of people before they come down and then after. And you know, probably for you, it's the same. One of the more amazing things about doing this work is is just that, seeing people when they come down, and then seeing a group of 23 people or something after this experience, and really just a profound shift that's happened. From your experience, I guess two parts. One, why are people coming down? What is the draw to work with these plants, especially maybe ayahuasca? What are people looking for? What are the ailments they're dealing with? And what do you think they're emerging from that experience with?
Well, in my experience, there's people from all kind of walks of life and different countries and cultures and life experiences. But I would say that if there's something that is common, like shared by most of the people, is a deep insatisfaction with our own culture. It's like this mistrust of our own ways. You know, like many people come there because, you know, they cannot get rid of some trauma or illness or disease or something. They've tried many things in their countries and it's not working, you know. So they, you know, what makes somebody, you know, leave their comfort and go to the Amazon to drink this brew with some weird looking old person that doesn't speak my language and is like everything in my culture says a sorcerer or a witch doctor or a demonic thing, you know. But you know, to do that is like, it takes like something deep. Sometimes it doesn't feel that much, but it is. It's like, really, my own culture is not giving me the solution. My own culture is not giving me the answers my soul, my heart is deeply longing for. I want to know more. I want to see more. I want to understand. There must be something much more meaningful to this life than waking up, going to work, and then going back home, watch TV, sleep, go back to work, pay the mortgage, there must be much more meaningful. And this is what people deeply are looking for, you know, answers that our own culture cannot give us. Because we closed that door. We decided in a particular moment in history that all the things that we cannot measure, explain, experiment, reproduce just doesn't exist. I think, thus they exist. It's a choice, particular choice of a civilization, and it's arbitrary. So we live with that thing inside, deep inside, longing for something more, longing for deeper answers. So people come there just maybe with the excuse of healing a disease, ancient trauma, problems in relationships, problems in a professional life, whatever. But deep inside, this I think that's the core thing. We know our culture is not able to give us the answers that our hearts are deeply longing for. It can't. So we look for the most extreme, different, far away in time and space alternatives, you know. And ayahuasca has been, you know, the past years, it's been the queen for this, you know. Yeah. I think I'm missing a part of the.
Well, yeah, that's great. And how do you think a plant like ayahuasca is working? Because as you said, there's just this real tremendous transformation that you see in people. So what's, you know, some people, maybe they've worked with ayahuasca, so they're familiar, but if they haven't, what what could someone expect? What's happening that allows so many people to be having these profound experiences? And I mean, because I would imagine that's a big reason why this work is spreading is actually just through word of mouth. Is someone comes back and, you know, as you said, they're like, this is amazing. I've had this enlightening experience. What is ayahuasca doing that's allowing someone to heal from these things, or to resolve these mental, emotional things they're coming down with?
I think basically it's like giving you the opportunity to see your own shit from a different angle that you were never expecting that was possible. You know, it's like wow, you know, I heard a lot of these things, but you know, experiencing it, like wow, I didn't know this was possible. I saw my life, I saw my birth, I saw myself in the womb of my mother and reborn again, and I saw in that moment what happened to me that makes me this miserable person now. You know,
Mm.
it is a possibility to see these things, and many times even there's a lot of people that have this kind of experience even out of the context, you know, in these churches or in people that take the medicine with, you know, to the States or to different countries, and the medicine itself gives a lot, you know, but the problem is that taking it out of its system, what we're doing is like using it as a how do you say like a pill, like how do you say, like you know, like putting something there in a void, in a place, in an empty space. I'm going to put this there to balance this imbalance, you know. But the problem that I see in all this thing, even if like a lot of people are having this amazing experiences and really changing their lives for better, you know, is that eventually we go back to our same world. We go back to that same reality that is producing all this imbalance. And then we forget. We get disconnected. In the ayahuasca experience, many people experience, you know, oneness, God, you know, and then they, you know, they're in the jungle, barefoot, when they arrived, like being scared by a mosquito, you know, like, and then suddenly they're naked and they, oh my God, everything is connected. But that lasts for a certain period of time. Eventually, you know, you start getting into this train of life, and you start forgetting. And what people do, oh, I need to go back and drink ayahuasca again, you know. And then the people start thinking that it is ayahuasca that is doing this for them. It is just ayahuasca. And I came to the realization with some elders, you know, that what ayahuasca is doing is like spreading like a vine in the world, you know, touching people, making people have glimpses of awakening, you know, glimpses of illumination. Oh, this is what the possibility. I would love to be like this all the time, but I can't, you know. And for me, it's like a Trojan horse. What ayahuasca is doing in the world for me is like a Trojan hummingbird. You know, it's getting inside, but it's not, what important is not really that hummingbird, that horse. What is really important is what's inside and around. What is it? All the knowledge of these peoples, very diverse people that have been working with that for so many generations. See, when I was speaking with some scientists, they say, well, you wanted to to study ayahuasca and see how it works in the brain, and the active principles of the DMT and the Armala and the MEOs and the things, how it interacts in the brain and what it does in the brain, these people maybe never thought that was relevant. When they were really studying for centuries, for maybe a couple of thousand years, is how to enter in these other worlds, navigate safely, negotiate with invisible forces to bring balance, to bring health to individuals, to communities, and to territories. This is a totally different thing, right? So for me, what ayahuasca is doing is like just giving glimpses of awakening, so that people like, wake up, you know, wake up. There's something more. We can do this. Now is the time, you know. You need to get out of that all same patterns, coming back to all those same patterns that are creating, that feeding this civilization that is destroying everything. Wake up. Because when you do, you know you're happy. You know you feel fulfilled. And now is the time that we need to open up and really start listening to the other and be really curious, authentically curious about what these other peoples are saying. Not as a belief system, not like that's what they believe. No, that's what they know. That's what they have studied for generations. That's the accumulation of knowledge that is different from ours, that is now needed to come into the picture to complete that puzzle, you know, to bring that new dawn of humanity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned this idea of being a bridge keeper. What do you foresee your path coming up as? What is there anything on the horizon, or how do you see yourself continuing to do this work, be a bridge keeper, integrate your anthropology background, working with medicines? How do you see that for yourself?
Well, as I told you, we're working on this project of doing research, scientific research. So it's bridging ancestral science and modern science. This is a great challenge for me. This is the really very important part, because science is the language that allows legitimacy, right? So if science can be really scientific and start studying these things and then translating this in a scientific language with data and everything, then it would bring indigenous knowledge to the table of negotiations of humanity, you know, to address the great challenges we have, you know, the great crisis, civilization crisis, because it's not just a climate crisis or economic crisis or pandemic, it's a civilization crisis. And in human history, we have passed from, you know, stages or from one civilization of another. Like, we have done enormous leaps of progress only when we have integrated the other, the most different, brought in, you know. Like you know, when, you know, the conquest, the invasion of the Americas, you know, allowed the Renaissance, basically. And it came also after a great pandemic, you know. The Renaissance, you know, came after the you know, the Black Beast. I don't know how you say it in
Black Plague.
English.
Yeah.
The Black Plague. And then the discovery of the Americas, you know, bringing all these new things, new food, new ideas, new you know, that the earth is round, and you know, this allowed for the human imagination to expand, you know, allowing for the Renaissance. And this is what we need now. We have a pandemic, and we have many different indigenous people around the world willing, for once, to really share their knowledge and to sit on the table and to share, you know. So for me, the Bridgekeepers is a very important key player in this, like really allowing how these different, extremely different people to sit and communicate and exchange, you know. So yeah, and you know, and also, you know, like Charles Eisenstein and other people are talking about this story of separation and this paradigm of separation, and this is exactly it, you know. The Bridgekeepers mission is humanity is united, you know. But what's in the way? It's these ideas of separation, this story of separation. And where does it live? It lives in my head. It lives in your head. It lives in people's head. So to put together scientists and shamans in the same table, everybody needs to do this exercise of constantly hunting this mind of separation inside of themselves, in order to be able to find where we connect. What is the other really talking about? You know? So for me, this is a very important thing. And another important thing about the Bridgekeepers is also bridging different indigenous peoples among themselves, because they've been isolated and separated for so long, and they also need this interaction and connection among the other, because, as I said in the beginning, we have all lost a lot of knowledge, you know, of ancient, profound, deep knowledge on how this planet works and how our communities can live in harmony with our environment, with all life around us. We have lost that, most of it, but some keep different pieces. And by uniting, then others remind each other, and we're doing this also. It's really beautiful and gratifying to do this. You know, for example, I took the Mamos to the Ashaninka people in Brazil, you know, and the exchange was really beautiful, and doing these gatherings. And now we have this opportunity that we realize we can do this without traveling so much, you know. So we're doing Zoom calls and live sessions between, you know, we have the past days, we had a festival with Buddhist monks that live in France, you know, with indigenous leaders in the Amazon, you know. It was beautiful, you know, the exchange and the depth of the things that you say, wow, people that are coming from so far away with so different ways, but deep inside, they're talking about the same thing. And the same thing that our science say doesn't exist, you know? So yeah, it's basically that. You know? It's a great service. It's a beautiful thing to do. We need a lot of support for that, because, you know, as you can imagine, there's no business on this. There's no, you know, how you make money, how you make a living by doing this, you know. Fortunately, like the monks were saying also, you know, when you're in this service, in this thing, you really need not to consider those things, because those considerations get in the way, you know. And then when you're doing good service for life and for people, then life provides, you know, and really being patient and observing and being grateful for what life is giving you back from other ways, from other parts, you know. So eventually people also are getting together, understanding that this mission and this idea of the bridge keepers is very important. So they want to support and they want to give funding, you know, to allow for travels, for organizing gatherings, for, you know, all these logistic things that, yeah, until now they cost a lot of money, you know. So that's really beautiful that people are really understanding this idea, this concept of being bridge keepers. And also one other thing that is very important, and for many people that are listening, you know, as myself, you know, this idea when you start a kind of, let's say, spiritual path, you know, or you start having experience with plant medicines and this openness, and then you have this idea, oh, I want to learn, I want to become a medicine man, I want to heal people, I want to become a shaman. You know, so people go there to the Amazon and try to find a teacher and pay them a lot of money to give them a dieta and a teaching. And all the time, it's very rare that those teachers really give the full teaching, because there's a background of mistrust. If I give this to these people, they are not going to be able to hold this power. They're not going to be able to, they're not going to have the responsibility of all this power, and they don't have the consciousness on how to give back in reciprocity. So the idea of the bridge keepers puts that aside. It's like, get out of your mind of becoming them, of, you know, of doing their work. Be the bridge. When you, in my experience, when you realize that and you come to the other, that wisdom keeper, I want to learn because I want to help you build a bridge so that your knowledge and your message can be heard. I don't want to be like you. I don't want to do your work. That's yours. You're the keeper of that knowledge. But if you teach me enough, I can pass on the message. And then I can bring people and I take you different places, and you know, you're gonna have much more opportunities. If you give me that, I'm gonna give you a bridge. And if I'm there only for giving a bridge, they have the trust and they start giving. You know, when I realized that my mission was to be a bridge and not a shaman, that's when my teachers really started to teach me. You know, so this is the idea of the bridge keepers.
If people want to support in any way, is there some way they can do that?
Well, we're working on that. We're working on a website. For now, we have a Facebook page. It's called the Bridge Keepers, where we post different things. And there's information there, different campaigns that we support, you know, supporting different indigenous people, doing retreats in different places in Brazil, in Colombia, in Peru, bringing elders when things open up, you know. We like to travel again and bring the elders to different places. So you can contact us through Facebook for now, and then eventually we'll have this website called bridgekeepers.org. It's not online yet. Yeah, and also you can support us through the Chaikuni Institute. That is this non-profit sister organization of the Temple of the Way of Light. So we're working with them also in different projects with the Shipibo. And yeah, we want to support. I think that's the two main parts, main places you can get in contact with us and support and become a bridge keeper.
What else? Anything else you want to talk about or address? Anything on your mind?
No, just again, maybe reinforce this message that we're getting from the elders, that this is really the time that we need to put aside the thoughts that separate us and start, getting together with all the different people in the world, all the wisdom keepers in the world, and give them the right space, their righteous place in the history of mankind. We really need to bring the new dawn of humanity. It's done already, but we need to make it. Mm-hmm. And with the proper guidance and the the good spirit and the beautiful, great intentions that we all have, we are doing this, and we are going to make it. Yeah.
With the tubu, they talk about, is it the Diro Amasa? That's that's kind of what they're alluding to also, no?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the Chacaruna, the Quechua people say, Chacaruna is literally people of the bridge. And the Diro Masa is a really beautiful story. As I mentioned, the Tubu, in their stories, the elders used to say that they were already exterminated long before physical extermination started. And they had this story of the Diro Masa, which is the mutation of Tubu into something new. There is a possibility of the continuation of that line, of that lineage, of that message, of that system, of that knowledge, for the benefit of a new time. The people of the dawn. Yeah, the story is really, really beautiful and profound, but basically is that, in the moment where Tubu is exterminated, he picks up a little drop of blood of the last fetus that was eaten by this jaguar nation that wanted to exterminate Tubu. And he finds this little drop of blood, and he blows breath of life, and then these two beings appear. And since he knows that there was no elders, nobody to take care of these kids, and that these jaguars really wanted to exterminate them, he lifts the veil of time and he places them in the dimension of the thunder, where he teaches them, and all the stories, the chants and the dances, and feeds them only with the medicines of the Anaconda Canoe, with all their dances and stories and chants that contain healing codes. So they did a very good dieta over there in the dimension of the thunder. And they were only kids when he realized that they were ready. So he lifts again the veil of time, and he brings them back to this dimension. But when they come to this dimension, they don't look anymore like Indians. They're not short, dark skin, black hair, The elders say that the Diro Masa, they are taller, whiter skin, colored eyes, blonde hair or colored hair. They're the Diro Masa, the people of the dawn, the Avengers. And where he places them, because there are no elders to take care of them, he places them under the care of a couple where the grandma is from the Jaguar nation, from the same nation that exterminated Tubu. Does that ring a bell? You know, for all these people that come from this, our physical ancestors, directly or indirectly participated in the extermination of indigenous peoples in the world. But deep inside you feel you don't fit in anymore. You don't agree totally with the story they tell you. You have something inside longing for something else. And you dare to go around the world looking for elders, adopting new grandparents. Because our own were unable to give us the answers that we want. Because their answers, we know that reproduce that same pattern of destruction. So we have all this thing inside and we don't fit in. We don't fit in. And we try to fit in, but nothing works. And we want to go out, we need different answers, we need different things, and eventually we get there. And then elders recognize us and start giving us things. Because it's a diro masa. We already come, they say, with this knowledge, but we need to awaken it. We need to remember. And we need the help of this guide. We need the guidance of these masters. And they are out there. You don't need to go that far away for that. If you're in the States, go to the reservation. Go look for the indigenous that are the natives that live close to you. And it's gonna be very hard. You're gonna get there and you're gonna feel rejected. They're gonna say, "Oh man, there's another whitey that is coming here wanting to wear feathers." Go beyond that. Show them that they can trust you. Show them that you are at service. That this is a new time. You know, you don't need to go to the Amazon. You don't need to go to India. Take your car and drive an hour. Go look for that elder, you know. When in the beginning you will feel rejected, but eventually they will find out and they will be so happy that somebody, young white people, finally want to listen. And why will they open? Because it's also in their stories. They know that this time is coming and that time is now. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. So I've been ending the podcast. You've answered it in a number of different ways, but with this question of what do you think these plants or traditions, what do you think they're trying to teach people?
That basically that the forces that rule over life on earth are are there, and we can connect and tap to them. That everything in life is interconnected, that there's nothing loose, that this idea of the individual that is separated from everything is an illusion. that we are all interconnected with all the life that surrounds us. And then we need to remember the ways in which we can live accordingly to keep the balance, to be the stewards of this planet. I think basically this is what is happening. This is the biggest message, you know. We are here and we have all these amazing capacities as a species to be the stewards of this creation, not to destroy it, not to think that we are the owners of it and that we can do whatever we want with it. We need to take care of it. We need to reconstruct, rebuild our house that is falling down. It's falling apart. We are destroying it. And we need to bring it up. A new house where we all fit. All life. All beings. I think that's what they're doing.
Great, brother. Well, it's good timing because I just finished my mambe, and we're actually coming up on 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, time goes by.
Wow. I'll be curious if somebody really listened to the whole thing.
I think there'll be a number of people listening. It was a pleasure, man. I always love talking to you. I think you truly are a bridgekeeper and a really beautiful ambassador of this work, and you just have a lot of integrity, and you know you've been around this world for a long time, and I think people like you are really important, because I think there is, especially in this time we're in, where things do seem so divisive and people are so strongly attached to their beliefs and how they think things should be, and I think this work really does offer the possibility to see things in a new light, to see things in a different way, and to connect with people. And yeah, for me, I think that's a big reason why these plants are spreading so much, is because it's needed. There's a deep need for what they're offering out there, and the more people like you out there, the better to really to bridge those gaps. So you know, I really appreciate you coming on, and it's always a pleasure working with you, and hopefully in this coming year when things do begin to reopen that we can continue to do that some more.
Yeah, and thank you so much. It really it's really important for me coming from you, that also, you know, you're also a Bridgekeeper and you're doing also an amazing work. We're doing this together, and I really thank you for this opportunity and for doing this podcast. I think it's really, really good. Yeah, and I hope really that this opens up and we can start playing together again.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you
I'd love to get maybe Amika on one time too. I think he's a guy who has so much knowledge to share, and I think the more people who hear his voice, that's just a really powerful message that needs to be told too. So we'll work on that, and I'd love to have you back on. I mean, I could talk to you for hours, so probably 3 hours is probably a limit for people, but we'll try and do it again soon. And there's so much to talk about. So
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate it.
Right. Thank you so much, Jason. Take care.
So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Claude. I know it was a bit long, but I think if you made it through, hopefully you got a lot out of it. The next show I think I'll be having a show with a a yoga teacher who I've worked with a lot, and she also does a lot of work with plants. I think she should be really great. And then a mindfulness-based psychotherapist who I've worked with, and she's recently done the MAPS psychedelic assisted therapy training. So I thought that would be a really good episode too. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, if you're able to hit the subscribe button through YouTube and go on Apple Podcasts, leave a starred rating and a review, that would really help. And to everyone who's donated to this show, I really appreciate it. And if you haven't, if you have the means and the ability, Patreon is a really good way to do that. It has all sorts of added benefits like early access to shows and bonus material, Q&As, things like that. So it's a really nice way to give back and get something in return. So that's it. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Doom.